Hello everyone, welcome to lesson 20.2B. I've entitled this video, The Colonial Era of East Africa. This video is going to cover pages 620 to 623. The Colonial Era. Until the late 1800s, most Europeans knew little or nothing about Africa. Two of the continent's most famous explorers were Henry Morton Stanley and David Livingstone. In 1878, Stanley published a popular travel book about his adventures in Africa. The book's title was Through the Dark Continent. The goal of Stanley's journey was to locate Livingstone, a medical missionary. Livingstone had traveled to Africa in the hope of locating the source of the Nile River. Question 1. What impact did the 1878 book Through the Dark Continent have on African and European history? Well, it sparked interest in Africa from people living in Europe. And unfortunately for the people in Africa, it's not always going to be positive interactions. European traders. Just before 1500, the European Age of Discovery began to impact East Africa. Among the European countries, Portugal took the lead in overseas exploration. Along with other Europeans, the Portuguese established a sea route to India. From Europe, they sailed south along the west coast of Africa, so starting here in Lisbon and going along the west coast of Africa, and then along the east coast of Africa. Then they sailed along the coast of Arabia and on to India, which is right here. This was a much easier and less expensive way to trade with India than any of the overland trade routes. So trying to go from Portugal to here this way was more expensive than going by ship. In this way, the Portuguese were able to bring back many valuable spices from India. Question 2. During the Age of Discovery, what European country led an overseas exploration? Portugal. Number 3. How did Portuguese trade with India impact Africa's history? Well, by having ships leave Portugal and go to India using this route, it allowed some cities along the route to become trade cities along the coast of Africa. As trade increased, the Portuguese began to demand tribute, or a regular tax payment, from the East African trading cities. The Portuguese had religious as well as economic motives. They believed that Christianity should replace Islam as the region's religion. Portuguese influence in the region did not last long, however. The Portuguese could not withstand attacks by African groups in the region. Other European countries became interested in colonizing Africa. Question number 4. What does the word tribute mean? Tribute is a tax payment, a regular tax payment, you might say like a legal bribe. It's basically like, hey, we'll keep doing this if you pay us money. So in a way, it's kind of like a legal bribe, if you will. Question number 5. What did Portugal expect from the East African trading cities as trade increased? They did expect tribute. They did expect annual payments, regular payments to be given to them for this service. Question number 6. What religious impact did the Portuguese want to make on East Africa? They wanted to bring Christianity to that region and replace Islam with Christianity. Question number 7. Eventually, what happened to the Portuguese in East Africa? They were not able to keep their influence there as they were kicked out by groups from Africa. European colonial rule. In the late 1800s, European leaders set out a plan to dominate and control the continent of Africa. The action by which one nation is able to control another smaller or weaker nation is known as imperialism. Question number 8. What happened to Africa in the late 1800s? European leaders made a plan that they were going to come over and dominate and control the continent of Africa, bully them, which is essentially what imperialism is. Question 9, what does the word imperialism mean? When a stronger country or nation is able to control another smaller or weaker country. That is known as imperialism, with a synonym of bullying. They were able to control someone that they were stronger than that weaker country. Africa was carved up into colonies. The reasons for colonization included economic profit, access to raw materials, and the opening of new markets. These reasons also included national pride, the protection of sea routes, the maintenance of the balance of power, and a quest to convert Africans to Christianity. And we're ready for a big question here. Question 11. What were the 7 reasons why Africa was carved into colonies? Number 1, economic profit. The countries of Europe wanted to make money from this. Number 2, access to raw materials. There were a lot of raw materials on the big continent of Africa that Europe wanted to use. 3, opening new markets. Europe wanted to be able to trade with these countries in Africa, get things from Africa in exchange some things they could sell to Africa. 4, national pride. It made them feel good about their country to go down to Africa and pick on these areas and plant their flag in that region. 5, the protection of sea routes. They wanted to basically have these routes, and they thought that having bases along the way would keep their ships safe. 6, maintaining the balance of power. They were afraid that if one country in Europe was to go down to Africa and take over all the region, that country in Europe would be unfairly powerful. And lastly, they wanted to convert Africans to Christianity. So either switch them from Islam to Christianity or just introduce them to Christianity for the first time. Occasional rebellions challenged European colonial rule. An especially bloody rebellion occurred against British and Egyptian domination in Sudan. Muhammad Ahmad, a religious and military leader, declared that he was the Mahdi, or Redeemer of Islam. Mahdist forces succeeded in capturing Khartoum, the Sudanese capital. They established a new state there. In 1898, the British succeeded in reasserting their control of the region. Question number 12. What actions did Muhammad Ahmad take in Sudan against the imperialism? He fought back. He said, no, I'm not going to let this happen. And he led a bloody rebellion. And he said, I am the Redeemer of Islam. And he was able to successfully capture the Sudanese capital of Khartoum. Independent Ethiopia. The revolt against foreign influence in Sudan eventually resulted in failure. In Ethiopia, however, the desire for independence prevailed. Italy had colonized the neighboring territory of Eritrea along the Red Sea coast. In 1889, the Italians signed a treaty with the Ethiopian Emperor Menelik II. Over the next few years, Italy claimed that according to one provision of this treaty, it had the right to establish a, quote, protectorate in Ethiopia. Menelik firmly denied these claims. He rejected the treaty in 1893. The Italian governor of Eritrea finally launched a major military attack in response in 1896. At the Battle of Adwa on March 1st of that year, Menelik defeated the Italian army. This conflict was one of the most important battles in African history. After the Battle of Adwa, the European powers had no choice but to recognize Ethiopia as an independent state. Physical geography played an important role in Ethiopia's ability to remain independent. Rugged mountains with difficult terrain proved a barrier that was difficult for attacking forces to overcome. Question number 13. What does the word protectorate mean? Well, as shown right down here, it is a dependent territory while a greater state retains control. So it's kind of like you are controlled by a more powerful country. They're going to watch over you and, quote, protect you. Question number 14. What European country made Ethiopia its protectorate? Italy. Question 15. What actions did the Ethiopian Emperor Menelik II take against Italy? Well, he said, well, I'm not going to accept this treaty. And so they fought battles, and they successfully fought back and said, nope. And they stayed an independent country. Question 16. Why was the Battle of Adwa an important battle in African history? Well, what it did is it showed, hey, these countries are not going to put up with this colonization, with this control, this domination, this imperialism, and they would fight back. And question 17. What played an important role in allowing Ethiopia to defeat the Italians and win their independence? Well, having that rugged mountain terrain made it very hard for the attacking forces to be able to overcome. Well, thank you so much for watching. Before we go, I have this for you. We should imperialize more countries. Smack! Enough. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.